In the heart of Sao Paulo, Brazil, stood a monument to despair. This was not just any building, it was a fortress of sorrow and suffering, a place where hope was often extinguished. Carandiru Penitentiary, a concrete behemoth, it loomed over the city, casting a long shadow of fear and suffering. Its walls held countless stories of pain and anguish, stories that echoed through the corridors and cells. Built in 1920, Carandiru was meant to be a model prison. It was designed with the intention of reforming inmates, providing them with a chance to reintegrate into society. However, the reality turned out to be starkly different. It became a symbol of everything wrong with the Brazilian penal system. The infrastructure deteriorated over the years, and the once promising institution fell into disrepair. The walls, now crumbling, bore witness to the neglect and decay that had set in. Overcrowding was rampant. Disease was rife. Cells designed for a few inmates were packed with many more, leading to inhumane living conditions. The lack of proper sanitation and medical care exacerbated the suffering of the prisoners. Violence was a constant threat. The overcrowded conditions and lack of resources led to frequent clashes among inmates and between inmates and guards. The atmosphere was one of perpetual tension and fear. For those who walked through its gates, Carandiru was not a place of rehabilitation. It was a place where dreams were shattered, and the human spirit was often broken. The heavy gates that closed behind them symbolized the end of hope. It was a place of punishment, degradation, and often death. The dark cells and dimly lit corridors were a testament to the despair that permeated the prison. For many, Carandiru was a final destination, a place where they would spend their last days in misery. To enter Carandiru was to enter a world of darkness. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, urine, and fear. Cells designed for a handful of men housed dozens. Privacy was non-existent, sanitation was abysmal. Rats scurried through corridors. Gangs ruled with an iron fist. Guards, outnumbered and outmatched, often turned a blind eye to the horrors unfolding within the prison walls. Every day was a struggle for survival. For many, that struggle ended in failure. The conditions within Carandiru were a tinderbox. Overcrowding fueled tensions, lack of basic necessities bred resentment. The absence of meaningful rehabilitation programs fostered despair. It was only a matter of time before the prison exploded. The guards, ill-equipped and poorly trained, were unable to maintain control. The inmates, many of them incarcerated for minor offenses, were left to their own devices. In this environment of chaos and desperation, violence became the norm, and on October 2, 1992, the world would bear witness to the horrific consequences. It began with a brawl, a dispute between two inmates in Carandiru's notorious Pavilhão 9, Pavilion 9, quickly escalated. Soon, the entire pavilion was engulfed in violence. Guards, fearing for their lives, retreated. They sealed the exits, trapping the inmates inside. What followed was a massacre. The police stormed the pavilion. Armed with assault rifles and fueled by fear and anger, they opened fire. Indiscriminate, brutal, unforgiving. When the smoke cleared, 111 inmates lay dead. Hundreds more were injured. Section 5, Echoes of Gunfire, Survivor Testimonies, and the Official Report. This section delves deep into the haunting memories and official findings that followed the tragic events at Carandiru. The massacre at Carandiru sent shockwaves throughout Brazil and the world. News headlines screamed of the horror, and the streets were filled with protests. People from all walks of life came together, holding candles and demanding justice for the fallen. Survivors told harrowing tales of brutality. Their eyes, filled with pain and trauma, recounted the unimaginable. Men with scars, both physical and emotional, shared their stories, while others could only hold their heads in their hands, overwhelmed by the memories. They spoke of executions, torture, and a complete disregard for human life. The brutality they described was beyond comprehension, with scenes of prisoners tied up, tortured, and executed without mercy. The police, meant to uphold the law, became the very embodiment of terror. Their accounts painted a picture of a police force out of control. The chaos of the riot, The sight of armed police in riot gear and the relentless attacks on prisoners highlighted a system that had lost its way. The official report was equally damning. Government officials, under immense pressure, held press conferences, and the documents laid bare the extent of the atrocities. Judges, reading the reports, were visibly shaken by the findings. It condemned the police for using excessive force. The report detailed numerous instances where the police had gone beyond their mandate, clashing with civilians and making forceful arrests. The courtroom atmosphere was grim as the weight of the evidence became clear. It highlighted the inhumane conditions within Carandiru. The prison was overcrowded, with dilapidated facilities and prisoners living in cramped, unsanitary conditions. The report painted a bleak picture of a system in dire need of reform. It called for accountability and reform. Activists and protesters took to the streets, holding banners and demanding change. The call for justice echoed in courtrooms where the gavel's strike symbolized the hope for a better future. But for the families of the victims, justice seemed a distant dream. They held photos of their loved ones, attended memorials, and cried together, united in their grief. The pain of their loss was a constant reminder of the need for true justice and lasting change. Section 6 Justice delayed, the trial and its aftermath. The trial of the police officers involved in the Carandiru massacre was long and arduous. It was a case that gripped the nation, drawing attention from all corners of the globe. The courtroom was often filled with journalists, family members, and human rights activists, all eager to see justice served. The atmosphere was tense, with every session bringing new revelations and emotions running high. It was plagued by delays, legal wrangling, and allegations of witness intimidation. Years turned into decades. The legal system seemed to move at a glacial pace, with numerous appeals and procedural hurdles. Lawyers on both sides fought fiercely, each trying to outmaneuver the other. The defense often argued that the officers were merely following orders, while the prosecution painted a picture of cold-blooded murder. The families of the victims waited for justice. They waited for closure. Every delay was a fresh wound, a reminder of the loved ones they had lost. Many of them attended every session, holding on to hope that one day they would see justice served. Their grief was palpable, their pain evident in every tear shed and every anguished look exchanged. Finally, in 2013, over 2 decades after the massacre, a verdict was reached. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. As the jury delivered their decision, there was a collective intake of breath. The media captured every moment, broadcasting it live to millions of viewers. The judge's voice echoed through the room as he read out the verdict. 74 police officers were found guilty of murder. The announcement was met with a mix of relief and sorrow. For many, it was a bittersweet moment. The officers, once seen as protectors, were now branded as criminals. They were led away in handcuffs, their faces a mix of defiance and resignation. The sentences ranged from 48 to 624 years. The severity of the sentences reflected the gravity of the crime. The judge's gavel struck down, signaling the end of a long and painful chapter. The courtroom was silent, the weight of the moment sinking in. It was a clear message that such atrocities would not go unpunished. It was a landmark decision, a moment that would be remembered in the annals of history. The trial had set a precedent, showing that even those in positions of power could be held accountable for their actions. The media coverage was extensive, with headlines proclaiming the verdict and its implications for the future. But it did little to heal the wounds of the past. The families of the victims still carried the scars of that fateful day. While the verdict brought some measure of justice, it could never bring back their loved ones. The pain and loss remained, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. The trial was over, but the aftermath would linger for years to come. Section 7, Out of Sight, Not Out of Mind, The Legacy of Carandiru. Carandiru Penitentiary was demolished in 2002. The physical structure was gone, but its legacy lived on. The massacre became a symbol of police brutality, institutionalized violence, and the failings of the Brazilian penal system. The name Carandiru became synonymous with human rights abuses. It served as a stark reminder of the consequences of neglect, overcrowding, and the dehumanization of prisoners. Section 8. A Nation's Conscience, the Impact on Human Rights in Brazil. The massacre at Carandiru forced Brazil to confront its troubled history with prisons. It sparked a national debate about human rights, criminal justice reform, and the treatment of marginalized communities. Human rights organizations amplified the voices of the victims. They called for accountability and systemic change. The government, shamed by international condemnation, promised reforms. But the road to true justice was long and arduous. Section 9. A haunting question: can we truly escape the shadows of Carandiru? Today, the site where Carandiru once stood is a park, a place of remembrance, a symbol of hope. But the ghosts of the past still linger. The massacre at Carandiru serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of human rights. It compels us to ask ourselves a haunting question: can we truly escape the shadows of Carandiru? Or will its legacy continue to haunt us, a grim reminder of our capacity for cruelty and indifference?